Hello everybody, my name is Mr. Hat, and today we're going to be going over Saw 4, the last movie to be directed by Darren Bowman, and is written by new people. Marcus Dunstan, who wrote The Collector, which was supposed to be a Saw prequel, I believe, but got scratched. But he writes this movie, and I think these writers for this fourth one write the fifth, sixth, and seventh one also. Just like the last movie, this one had a budget of $10 million and managed to gross about $140 million worldwide. A little interesting thing about this movie borrows the bathroom set not from the first movie, but from Scary Movie 4. I always thought that was very funny. Like, Scary Movie 4 made such a perfect replica that they borrowed it for this movie. This one tends to be the most negatively viewed, like 4 and 5 are most people's least favorites. I always liked 4. I always remember this one being gorier than the third one, but it's actually really not, but we'll get into that. This one's very unique. It's definitely more unique because the main game isn't in one building or one location. It's all over the city. This guy gets to go wherever he wants. Well, not really, but he has to, if he really wanted to, he could go wherever he wants and say, screw the game, I'm gonna go get a fucking cheeseburger. But he keeps going to these different locations, hotel, factory, because that's where the cards are telling him to go if he wants to go save lives. But anyways, let's get our hacksaws and get prepared for Saw 4 in this week's Horror Franchise Wednesday.
Saw 4.
Alright, let's go over the little nitpicks that I have, my little comments, my dislikes, things I would have changed. First off, this movie shows John Kramer swallowing a tape. He swallowed one at the end of the third one, but you have to ask yourself why. He doesn't really need to swallow the tape. He could have just sat it on a desk and wrote, "Hey, this is for Hoffman," and he would get it. But why go through that trouble of swallowing tape that, looking at it, I don't see how the fuck he was able to swallow that tape. Impossible. Like, he would have choked, like, oh, shit, my plant's not working. And the movie opens with the end of the movie. It does that, like, Tarantino type of thing where the beginning is actually the end. But this tape at the very beginning, it almost ruins the whole reveal that Hoffman is the next, like, Jigsaw. He's his accomplice. Because if you listen to the tape and you already know what's going to happen, you're like, man, why didn't I see that? Like, that's clearly a red flag right there. This movie officially has a lot more CGI. Like, the first 3 didn't really have CGI. It might have been just like a little bit in the third one. But this one has CGI in almost every single death, every single trap. CGI is used on people's, like, scalps ripping, people blood squirting out of their neck. It's like, really, you don't have, like, special effects on your $10 million budget movie? Like, why are we using CGI? Can we not learn that that's not what we want? The main guy in this movie, his name's Riggs, I think. It's not Griggs, like the Lethal Weapon movies. This guy's name's Rig, and he's being tested because he opens doors too much. That's essentially why he's being tested. This whole game is like, you're always letting your emotions get to you because you always just open doors. You open doors and you shouldn't open them. You should make sure they're secure, and you always try to save people. Well, that's his fucking job. So why is he being tested? It's just like, at this moment in the franchise, people are being tested for the littlest fucking shit. Like, even in the first movie, Gordon was being tested because he was possibly cheating on his wife, so he didn't really, value his life. Like, it's always been about, like, you should value your life, so he would always pick people who didn't really value their life that much. People who should learn to appreciate it a little bit more. The first one kind of makes sense. Second one, they're criminals. They should appreciate life more. The third one, we got the neglectful husband and wife. They neglect their child because they're too busy mourning over the dead one. It makes sense. But in this one, we officially got somebody who doesn't seem like he's neglecting his wife that much. He still loves her, but he just opens doors. That's why he's being tested. I just don't get it. Alright, so let's talk about the traps, shall we? The traps in this movie are nowhere near as good as the third one. They're decent, but they're also just weird. They make no sense. Like, they're all traps that are for these people to do to themselves, and except for the first one. Like, the first one, Riggs can save her, but her game is to kill him if he saves her. And I just have to ask the question, if her tape said that there was a weapon that could have been used to save her a little bit sooner in front of her, why didn't she tell the officer about that? If I'm her, I would have been like, hey, I don't trust you're going to save me anytime soon, so there might be a weapon in that cabinet in front of me that you haven't checked that could actually help you get me out of the situation a lot quicker. If she had said that, her scalp never would have ripped, and she probably would appreciate him a lot more and not try to stab him. I found it very odd in this movie that there's magazines already, like legit, like all kinds of magazines and newspapers that talking about the Jigsaw killer. We officially know in this movie that this movie is taking place 6 months after the second one. And it is the second one that officially reveals who Jigsaw is, like his face. Because all the cops are in there, they saw him, they could spill the beans to everybody else. So that makes sense that they know who he is. But this is 6 months later. We got all kinds of books already. We got magazine shoots. They look like Jigsaw himself went to a studio and took pictures for this magazine. Even though he's basically been on a deathbed for the past 6 months, he still somehow went out and took all kinds of pictures for these magazines. Like, oh, I'll go do a photo shoot because now I'm famous. Can someone explain that to me? Like, why was that there? Did I miss something? That doesn't make sense to me. How he has all this fame and glory within 6 months with his face on magazines, that many. I also don't get how they know Amanda Young is the killer. I understand that those cops saw the tapes and they saw all the victims in that second movie's game and that she was one of them. But how did they know she was involved in any way, shape, or form? I know they probably didn't find her body, but they found all the other 7 bodies. So therefore they kind of just went like, well, if she survived, maybe she's the killer. How did they know that she's involved? I didn't hear anything that might have explained that. And like I said, this movie is Riggs, right? And he isn't confined to a factory, one location. He gets to travel the city, and at no point does he go, I'm going to bring backup for this next puzzle that I'm going to. He goes to the hotel by himself. It's like, I would have brought somebody. It's like, seriously, why doesn't he not call for help at any moment? He's not restricted. He's not handcuffed to this game. If he wanted to, he could just go to McDonald's and just shotgun a beer, do whatever the fuck he wants, but instead, he just feels like he has to do this game, and it's stupid. Like, I would have just walked away, really. And then it's like, he wants to save these people's lives so much, but then when you get to the fat guy, he forces him onto the bed, just because the tape said so. The tape doesn't say if you force this guy on the bed, a key's going to magically pop up to get you to the next location. No, he already has that key for the next location. So therefore, Riggs is now a fucking murderer. I'm supposed to root for this guy now? No. I don't care what that guy did. Why? You're making stupid decisions. This is the movie where I feel like John Kramer had a crystal ball next to his bed because all these things are lining up perfectly. Printed out text that say, like, this is going to happen. And it happens. Like, there's something that says, like, Strahm's going to kill an innocent person today. Well, how do you know that when he gets to that room at the end, that he's going to shoot that guy, and that guy is going to be a fucking idiot, Jeff, if you don't know. Spoiler alert, he gets to the room where Jeff is from the third movie, and Jeff, like a fucking idiot, just points his gun at him, like, where's my daughter? You don't point a gun at some stranger. Come on, you would assume that he's a cop. There's just moments in this movie that irritated the piss on me. It's like, how did he know that was going to happen? How did he know he was going to shoot that guy? How did they know that this guy was going to figure out what the G meant in these fucking papers, where that building was at? How did he know how this person was going to think? We get this random forensics girl who dies. She gets this little freaking harpoon nail right through her fucking face, and the detectives, they have literally 1 second of, like, shock and remorse. Less than a second, and they immediately jump back onto their case like, all right, we need to figure out what's going on. Where do we go? It's like, how about we take some time to focus on that girl and try to, like, just care a little bit about her. But no, they just immediately jump back to their case and they're focused on their work. They don't like, oh, fuck, that somebody that they worked with is dead now. They don't think twice about it. It's crazy. The editing, when there's the Strahm interrogation of Jill Tuck, we get more Jill Tuck in this movie. It's edited so fucking weird. It's over dramatic. It's crazy. And then, like, there's like a moment where you see a boom mic operator in the room. So that's a fuck up right there. That's always funny to see in movies where you see like a boom mic being held. You're like, haha, I saw it. You messed up. Another moment that pissed me off at the very end. We got this lawyer. He's like Zepp in the first movie because he's being forced to help Jigsaw. Otherwise, he'll die. He has this like device on the back of his neck that looks like it's gonna like pierce his throat or snap his spine or something. I would have liked to see that happen. But instead, Riggs shoots him in the fucking face, even though he clearly said, like, I'm just listen to the tape. He's grabbing this tape and he clearly has it in his hand before he gets his brains blown out by Riggs. Because Riggs is an asshole now. He's a murderer. And then what happens to Riggs? We don't get anything. Like, does he bleed out? Because he got shot in, like, the arm by Detective Matthews. He gets shot through the door in his arm, and then he just gets left on the floor. Does he die? I don't know. We don't see him again ever. So I'm going to assume he bled out from a shoulder wound. Then the whole reveal, Detective Hoffman's the bad guy. It's kind of obvious, but not too obvious to some people. I don't know. I don't know how I would have saw it coming. Like, I saw these movies already when I was a kid, like 9, 10, 11. So therefore, everything was a surprise. So I don't know how I would have, if I would have been smarter and picked up on it quicker as an adult, but I'll never get to know that. Was it obvious to you? But yeah, the traps. We get like 3 traps in this movie, maybe? Like the hair one, the fat guy, and the spikes pulling. Like, we get like 3 traps in this movie, and they're really not that interesting at all. But anyways, let's go over my positives, alright? Let's go over them. Let's do it. This movie opens with a very realistic autopsy that's being done on John Kramer. We see some dick and balls in the shadows. So look away. But this is a very realistic autopsy. It looks very gory. This movie's beginning is the goriest part of the whole movie. This movie has, hands down, probably the best reveal, like the best twist at the end. And the twist is that the 3rd movie and 4th movie are happening back to back at the same exact time. Just like this review I'm doing right now is happening the same day as the 3rd movie review. The other twist and reveal is that Hoffman is the bad guy too. He's the bad guy. He's the new apprentice. He's the one that helped out, Amanda with Carrie, lifting her up. He's been helping move bodies. I think he was responsible for helping with the rack in part 3. This movie introduces us to a lot of characters. We get Agent Perez, Agent Strahm. Strahm's the very passionate one, and he's okay. Like, I can buy it. Like, he's fun. But we also get more Jill Tuck and more Hoffman in this movie. The 5th movie is like Hoffman's movie. Just like Saw 3 was Amanda's movie, Saw 5 is Hoffman's movie. And we'll go over that next week. But this movie has a lot more Jill Tuck. We get to see more of her. She was just like this little flashing image in the 3rd movie. But we get to see a lot more of her. We get to learn a lot more about John Kramer. And I like that we get a little bit more motivation behind John Kramer. Because like I said in my Saw 2 review, the explanation about why he went crazy, did the Jigsaw thing, became the Jigsaw killer, it's okay. But this one adds more layers to it. About how, he had a wife, they had this planned pregnancy, he wanted this son named Gideon, she was 7 months pregnant, and then she was working for this health clinic that he supported, and he was going to build, like, this whole, apartment complex. He had, like, all these building projects that were going to, like, be for low-income people. So John Kramer was this very nice guy, but then one day his wife's son, 7-month-old son in the womb, gets killed by a junkie bitch. This guy, Cecil, and then after that, that's when he finds out he has cancer, and then everything we found out in Saw 2 happens too. So we get a little bit more behind him. I love all the little Easter eggs in this movie that point to that revelation at the end about how this is lining up with part 3, because there's a line in this movie where a detective walks in and he goes, there's a nurse missing from the hospital. That's a big clue right there. And Hoffman, he's walking out the door and he has his little toy, and it's the toy for the little girl in part 3. You don't even realize it. And the detective goes, oh, you have a family? Or, he goes, it's a daughter, And that's the daughter that's missing from Jeff and Lynn for part 3. And then this movie says that we see that it was Hoffman who put the envelope in the desk that he wrote Amanda on it, and that's what set Amanda off. We still don't know what the hell the paper in it said, but we know who was responsible for Amanda losing it and basically shooting Lynn at the end of the movie. This movie has a couple of cool transition shots. So it'll be like someone like going through a window and like goes into the next scene. This movie has cool transitions in it, so that's always positive. When you can be a little bit creative with your cuts and transitions. We get a little cameo from Razorbox Girl from Saw 2. She plays a hooker in this one. I think she's the same character, but she's like hitting on John Kramer. How ironic that guy would end up fucking you over later on. We find out that the Billy puppet is actually was going to be this little toy for Gideon, John Kramer's son. And we also get to see John Kramer. He's like practicing making tapes, doing his speeches. He's like writing speeches and trying to prepare to be Jigsaw. And he makes his very first trap. And I like that his very first trap, it breaks. So it's like showing that he's flawed. He's not perfect. And his first test subject is Cecil, who is the one responsible for his son's death. This movie has my favorite John Kramer in it. Like this one and then part 2. Probably my favorite John Kramer moments so far. We get to see a lot more emotion from Tobin Bell in this movie. And like I said, we get a lot more to the character in this movie. And then we see that he's making this glass box. Like he was making this glass box that's going to play a part in Saw 5. But was it going to have a different use? Because Hoffman uses it to basically do something else in the 5th movie. Was that all pre-planned before he ever met Hoffman? Like, what was that box going to be used for? I just have to wonder about that. If you've seen this movie and you're watching this, you know what I'm talking about. The whole glass box that gets used. Why did he make that, like, as his second big device? Like, what was he going to use it for? This movie also has the coolest death literally with the 2 ice cubes that go down, the 2 gigantic ice blocks that smash Detective Matthews' head. Probably the coolest death in the franchise so far, next to the rack. I enjoyed this movie. There's just lots of writing issues in my opinion. It just felt sloppy, and it wasn't up to par with the first 3 so far. So therefore, I gotta say when it comes to Saw 4, now this one's really just maybe worth a rental at Redbox. The Mr. Hat Award for Coolest Kill is going to go to Detective Matthews, who finally dies 6 months after being captured in the second movie, and we see that he gets his head smashed by these ice blocks. Very brutal. This death's pretty cool, isn't it? And the Mr. Twig Award is going to go to the piece of shit teacher slash principal, whatever he is, who bleeds out after his wife pulls out all the little spikes that were somehow magically placed in her body to a point where it wouldn't kill her, but it killed him. Those are my thoughts on Saw 4. Is this your favorite Saw sequel in the franchise? Does it have your best and favorite traps? Your best revelation? It's probably my favorite revelation at the end in this whole franchise so far. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and as always, you can support this video by clicking on this like button over here, and you can support my channel by clicking on my beautiful cartoon face in 5 seconds to see more, and until next time, auf Wiedersehen.